Thank you, Mero, for introducing me to this wonderful church and ministry. And he says that he left here, I think Pastor Matthew Ward said, he left here to go to Chicago to look for warm weather. He should have come to Kenya. That's where warm weather is found. And I left Kenya to come to Chicago not knowing the weather that was there in December of 2000. And I got there and found snow. I had never seen snow in my whole life. And that's another experience altogether. So Pastor Matthew Watts has asked me to share a little bit of my growing up and my testimony and how God has led me in my life and in our ministry until today. And in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm sure you're going to enjoy my Kenyan accent as I share a little bit of this. But I was born in Kenya, and I grew up in the western part of Kenya. Kenya is on the Indian Ocean, East Africa. And I grew up in a village about 8 hours drive from the village to the capital city, which is Nairobi. And those days in the 70s and the 80s and early 90s when I was growing up, it actually took about 10 to 12 hours to leave my village to go to the city. The reason was the roads were really bad and the vehicles were really few. Growing up in my village, I thought the rest of the world looks like my village. So let me tell you how my village looked like when I was growing up. We lived in a grass-thatched house made out of dirt. The walls were made out of dirt and the roof was grass-thatched. It was 2 rooms, and my parents slept in one room, and in their bedroom in a corner, there was a cooking stove that was basically 3 stones put around, and then you put the pot on it and you cook on it. And we, the children, slept in the sitting room. The girls will sleep in one corner and the boys will sleep in the other corner. And we slept on the floor, basically the rug, a little piece of rug that my mother will make, and she will give it to you, and you put it on the ground and you sleep. And I remember me and my older brother, we were sharing one blanket to cover ourselves. It's something that I always remember and laugh at today. But at night when we are sleeping, I will pull the blanket from my brother and cover myself. And then he will pull it from me and he will cover himself. And I'll pull it back and he'll pull it back. And your guess is as good as mine. We'll start fighting in the middle of the night over the blanket. So that is where we grew up. In our village, there was no modern amenities. We didn't have paved roads. We still don't have a paved road in my village until today. We didn't have a hospital that you can go to for treatment. We did not have houses were made of mud and grass thatched, as I have said. We did not have running water. So if you wanted water to drink, to cook, to shower, you go to the river. The same place where we took the animals to drink water is the same place we'll collect water for drinking. It's the same place we will go and do our washing and our laundry and our showering. That is the environment we grew in. When I went to school, we didn't have a classroom, especially for junior primary. What we will do is we will sit under a tree and we will write in the sand. And the teachers will help us to try to understand and to learn English and to learn mathematics and arithmetic, but all of it was under a tree in the sand. No notes to take home, no classwork to take home. So when I was growing up in that village, my understanding of the world was that. On Sundays, we will go to church because my mom said you have to go to church. And we went to a little small church that was built pretty much in the same way our houses were built. And when I went to that church, there was a pastor who had heard the word of God from a missionary. But beyond that, he had never been trained. He had never been equipped or discipled in the work of ministry and in the work of God. So all he will tell you is that if you want to become a Christian, you will come to church, we baptize you, and we change your name. So my African name is Mangoli. I know you can't pronounce that, but yeah, that's my African name, Mangoli. So he will say, instead of keeping the name Mangoli, you need to change from Mangoli to Martin, because Martin is English. It sounds nice, it sounds heavenly. And so if you changed your name, then you become a Christian. So you'll come to my village and you meet people and you say, are you a Christian? They'll say, yes. How did you become a Christian? I was baptized and my name was changed from an African name to an English name. That is the Christianity I was introduced to. That is what I knew as Christianity. Something in me always used to wonder, is this all that there is to life? But that is all that I knew. My father and my mother loved each other. That was evident. As a kid, you can tell. The way your father and your mother relate and the way they treat each other, you can tell they love each other. So as a small little boy, I knew my parents loved each other. I knew my father respected and honored my mother. And so we grew up in this nice family, and my parents said, with all the poverty, with all the lack of everything, they said, you have to go to school, you have to go to church, and you have to work hard. And so every morning, as we kept growing up, my mom will wake us up early in the morning. She will send us to the fields to plant some potatoes, to plant some vegetables, to do something that will provide for the family before we went to school. And it was the life we knew. At the age of 8, my father died. He was murdered. One day we woke up in the morning and Dad was not at home, and we had Mom was wailing and she was crying, and we said, Mom, what's going on? We use pit latrines in Africa, in the villages, so the toilet is not in the house. The toilet is outside, it's a little pit hole on the ground. And so my mom had gone to the toilet in the morning, the pit latrine, and she found my father's body lying there. He had been strangled and he was dead. And so we woke up to that reality, and it changed the whole story of our life. Because when you had a father and you have a mother, then they can work together to keep building the family. But now my father was dead. They had 8 children of their own, and they had 2 children they had adopted. My mom did not go to school. She was not educated. She could not be employed. In the villages, there were hardly jobs to employ anybody. And so she now had the responsibility to raise 10 children on her own. And that changed our lives. When my father died, we all thought, probably this is the end of it. There's no hope, there's no future. And of course, living in a village where the people who killed your father are also in the same village. You can never imagine whether you're going to be the next, whether your mother is going to be the next. You're always wondering, am I safe in this village? But my mom did not give up. And I am who I am today because of the sacrifice of my mother. There is power in what mothers do. She is still alive, and I go back to the village to visit her, and I look at her and I say, you are the greatest woman in this whole world because of what she did. My mom continued to work extra hard to sacrifice. She will wake up at 3 a.m. to pray. I know it because we slept in the same house. At 3 a.m. she will be up praying. She will pray for 1 hour, and then she will go out to milk her 2 cows that she had. After she milks the cows, she will come back, and if she finds any one of us still sleeping, she will get cold water and pour it on us. I don't know why she used to do that until today. But she will wake us up and say, you need to be in the fields right now doing some work before you go to school. So she worked hard, and she taught us the value of working hard. On Sunday, she told us to go to church. And then she told us, you have to go to school and you have to work hard in school. So we lived that life. We worked through that life. I grew up. I became a teenager. I finished high school. Now, I wondered, what next after high school? The few people that we knew have made it from our society, from our community, very, very few people that had made it, we know they left the village to go and make it. They went to the capital city. So for me, the next thing was, Mom, I want to go to the capital city. That is where people change their lives. That is where they make it. And I had no idea what was in the capital city of Nairobi. So I told Mom, I have to go to the capital city. And I remember so well, she took one of her chicken, she sold it, and she gave me money to get on a bus and to go to the capital city for the very first time. So I get to the capital city. I start searching around for some of the relatives I knew had come to the capital city. I find one who was willing to take me in. And when I get to the capital city of Nairobi, I have never watched TV in my whole life. And I'm now about 20 years of age. Never watched TV in my whole life. Never seen a TV in my whole life. I had never seen electricity, the lights of electricity bulbs in my whole life. I had never seen a telephone line. I had hardly seen vehicles and motor vehicles. I remember my childhood memory tells me this. There was only one beetle that passed through my village once. And I remember all the children in the village running to go and see, what is this thing that is passing? And it was a beetle that somebody had come around and passed there. And so I go to the city and I find motor vehicles. I find paved roads. I find high-rise buildings. I find electricity. I find telephony. I go to church and I find a church where a pastor is teaching the Bible, and I am like, wow. You mean there is another world other than my village? And then a question comes into my mind, into my heart. How come nobody has ever told me? How come nobody has ever come to my village to tell me there is more to life than what is there in my village? And so I began going to church, the church that I've talked about, and then I get opportunity to go to college, and I start studying in junior college. And as I go to church, I hear God's word, and I realize this is why Mom wanted me to go to church. So I get to know God's word, and I give my life to Christ. I finished junior college, and I looked at my pastor in the city of Nairobi, and I said to him, I think God is calling me into full-time ministry. And so there was a college in Nairobi that was run by Canadian missionaries that was training pastors. So I go to that college. Long story short, I graduate. And before I graduate, I come across a magazine by Billy Graham Ministries. And that magazine was advertising at the back page, Moody Bible Institute in America. Had no idea which side America is and how you get to America, or what Moody Bible Institute is. But I read, and they said, if you want to do Master of Divinity, Moody Bible Institute offers that. I had finished my first degree in theology, and I'm like, yes, I think this is the next thing to do. So I go back to my church, and I say, I want to go to Moody. I write an email. Emails were just starting to come into Nairobi. They were a new concept in Nairobi. So I find a computer where there is internet, and I write an email to Moody Bible Institute. I say, I want to come and study. And lo and behold, they admit me. So after they admit me, the question was, how do I get there? There was something that I knew about coming to America. Because in my church in Nairobi, people will always come with prayer requests. And they will say, Pastor, pray for me. I have applied for a visa to go to America. Pray that I will get a visa. The reason why people prayed is because people used to say, it is easy to go to heaven than to get a visa to go to America. It took a miracle of God to do that. So people prayed and said, pray for me. So I knew for me to get a visa to come to America to study, it will take a miracle of God. So I prayed. I didn't have money. I didn't have anything. I just prayed. Normally, when you're applying for visa in Kenya, you're supposed to produce bank statements that demonstrate that you are financially able to keep yourself in America. I didn't have any of those. Sometimes people will fake bank statements and things like that. Now I was a Christian. I was a pastor in a church. I could not fake it. So the day came and I went to the embassy to apply for a visa. And I get to the embassy. There were already 7 people ahead of me. I got to the embassy at 6 a.m. There were already 7 people ahead of me. The embassy opens at 8 a.m. So we stood there, and the line kept building and building for people who want to come to America. When it opened, at the window, behind the window was an African-American lady that was interviewing people. And I said, praise the Lord, she looks like me. She will give me a visa. So the first person goes to the window, and I could just hear her say this, sorry, you cannot go to America. Sorry, you cannot get a visa. Sorry, we can't give you a visa. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm number 8. Now, the people that were ahead of me had documents. They were presenting documents and evidence that they have money. I didn't have any of those. So I come to the window and I show her my letter of admission at Moody Bible Institute, and she asks me, why do you want to go to America? And I say to her, I want to go and study. She said, why can't you study here? I said, what I want to study is not offered here. He says, come back at 3 o'clock and pick your visa. I was like, wow. For some reason, I never got excited because now it was reality. I'm going to America, how do I get there? So I go back to my church and say, I have a visa to go to America, how do I get there? And the few pastors who are more knowledgeable than me say, you need an air ticket. So how do I get an air ticket? I had never flown a plane all my life. And they come together, they fundraise, and they buy for me a one-way air ticket to come to America. I get that air ticket, I get on the plane, and there was a gentleman in my church who was an elder that had lived in America, but he keeps coming back to Africa. He gave me $100. So I had my one-way ticket and $100, and I left Nairobi in December of 2000 to come to Moody Bible Institute. I had no idea what snow was, what winter was. My assumption was when I get to Chicago, I will be picked by the people from Moody Bible Institute. Of course, they knew I was coming. So I get to Chicago, and I come out of the immigration, and I look around confused, not knowing what to do. And a gentleman walks up to me and says, might you be Martin Simiu from Africa? And I said, yes, I am. He says, my name is Larry Ely, and I was at Moody Bible Institute, and I heard there was a student coming from Africa. I just came to see if you need anything. And I looked at him and I said, I need all the help I can get. I have no idea where I'm going. It was a Friday afternoon. And he tells me, because it's Friday, when we go to Moody, you'll find that all the offices are closed. So the best thing to do is, if you are willing, come and stay in my home, and then on Monday, I will take you to Moody Bible Institute. I never even thought twice. I didn't think, is he going to kidnap me or anything? Never thought twice. Say, yes, by all means. So I went to this gentleman's house, and I ended up staying there for 1 month because I didn't have any money. On Monday, he takes me to Moody Bible Institute, and I go through the registration process, and they ask me for tuition. And I look at them and I say, I have $100 on me. Tuition was thousands of dollars. And they say, that cannot get you into school. And so we talk, and then I look at them, and I think I had the boldness of the Holy Spirit, and I say to them, I had a one-way ticket, which I have already used, and I have $100. You have two choices. Admit me to study, or get me another ticket to go back to Kenya. So they looked at me and they realized this is a problem. And so they say, can you work? And I said, yes, I can work. So they gave me a work study. I went to their kitchen and to the food, where they keep the food, the store for the food. And I was given the job to work and pay for my tuition. And I went through school and I studied and I finished. And I praised God for that. But when I got to America, it was even more shocking than when I left the village to go to the city. Because Chicago is like 100 times better than Nairobi. And I go to Chicago and I say, God, you mean there is a world like this and we don't know this in Africa? How come people have so much? How come the society is so rich, the education facilities, the civilization, the development, the infrastructure? How come we don't know this in our world, in Africa? And I kept struggling with that question. I came to do Master of Divinity. After one semester, I went to the Dean of Graduate School and I said, I really don't know what I'm doing here, because I'm troubled that this world has so much to offer and the people in my village do not know about it. I don't know what to do. And he told me, maybe you want to do studies in missions. So I changed from MDiv and I joined the missions department. And that is how we got to go to Africa with Mero for the mission trip. When I was in Africa, God was still working in my heart. And it became clearer and clearer that God was telling me. He took me from my village. He gave me opportunity to learn and to see, so that I can go back to my village to help them. So when I finished my studies at Moody Bible Institute, I went back to Africa, to Kenya, and I wanted to help my people, and I didn't know where to begin. How do you tell somebody in a village like mine that there is something called a limousine? Where do you start by explaining that? I remember when I saw my first limousine, I said, is that the president passing? And I was told, no, those are common. People can hire them and use them. So I was like, how do I go back to my village and tell them the Christianity I have seen in America, the Bible colleges I have seen, the churches I have seen, the ministry of the word, the rich and the wealth that I have seen? How do I go back and tell people? But I knew God was telling me, go back to Africa, to the villages, and help them. So when we went back, we began by simply telling people, so if you're poor, what we can do, what we knew was there's an organization called Heifer International. They give you a cow, and you use it, and then you give a calf to the next family. So we started with that. Just say, we're going to help you get out of poverty. This is what Heifer International does. We're going to help you to do the same. Before long, I realized it doesn't work. Because most of these people have been helped by one non-profit organization or another in their life, but nothing has ever changed. They have been helped at one point or another, but nothing has. So I looked at it and said, this doesn't work, and I don't want to do anything that does not work. So I asked myself, God, what do we do? And the idea of what Nehemiah did came to my mind. The book of Nehemiah in the Bible. Nehemiah went back to his people and mobilized them to work together for change. And I said, God, this is what I want to spend my life doing. Mobilizing people and letting them know that God has given them gifts and the talents and opportunities and resources, and that if they arose and did what God had given them to do, their lives will change. So we began by recruiting pastors and saying to them, pastors, you are the one who knows the word of God. We are going to train you to become a qualified leader so you can help your people. And as Mero was saying, today we have over 1,300 pastors that we've been training in Kenya, in Malawi, in Rwanda, in Tanzania. As we work with these pastors, most of them are very, very poor. So they ask us, how are we going to eat? How are we going to feed our family? And we tell them, pastors, you need to be an example to your family. You need to be an example to your church. And what you need to do is start working, doing something to provide for yourself. So we'll teach them on how to use their farms. We will teach them on how to use the skills and the talents they have. And so the pastors began having businesses, small micro businesses. And so during the week, in the morning, they will go and work on their business. After that, they will go and do work in the church. And as the pastors were doing that, they began teaching their church members. So their church members also began doing small businesses and the things that will help them get money and start providing for themselves. As the church members were doing businesses, they bring tithe in the church. And then the church starts becoming relevant in the community. People start seeing the place of the church in the community. And slowly by slowly, we've been doing this. And so far, we have about 599 groups. Actually, that's our last count. I'm saying about because I know those groups keep creating them. That have been created by pastors. These are groups of people who are saying, we are going to create businesses for ourselves. We are going to learn the word of God for ourselves. We are going to embrace the values of the Bible. We are going to change our lives and not just wait for a charitable organization to come and change our lives. And we've been doing this again and again. And I know that probably there will be time to share something else. When time allows, we could take you through the statistics of what we have seen God do in 10 years. As Mero was saying, what began in my small village, today we are doing it in numerous villages, in 83 counties, in 5 countries, and the number keeps growing. What are we doing? We are telling people that if you rise up and use the talents and gifts that God has given you, with little support through training and maybe microfinance, you can change the situation in your village, in your community. We call it holistic transformation. And we believe that what we have begun in Africa, in the villages of Africa, has a hope, has a future, has a way in which it's going to transform Africa. How do I know that? Because now we are not introducing our ministry to new villages. Villages are calling us and they're saying, we have heard what you're doing in that village. Can you please come and do it in our village? And that has been possible because God brought me from a village, gave me opportunity to see what life has to offer, connected me to people like Mero, people like Pastor Matthew Watts. This church supports us. And because of that support and network, we are raising groups of people in African villages and telling them African villages do not need to remain the same. I referred to the book of Nehemiah earlier on. Nehemiah was living in exile. His people were living in the city of Jerusalem. The city of Jerusalem was broken down. The walls were burned. The city was not functional. But Nehemiah went back and said, it does not need to be like that. Things can change. And he mobilized the people and said, things can change. That is what we are doing in the villages of Africa. And we are seeing God bring change, one pastor at a time, one church at a time, one village at a time, one country at a time, and Africa is experiencing transformation. God bless you and thank you, Pastor Matthew.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Now, church, amen? Amen. I want to give Martin my time this morning. I'm going to take just a couple of minutes just to underscore something he said and to kind of share why it's important that we support the ministry of possibilities in Africa and just why it's so near and dear to my heart. There's a couple of reasons that Martin is near and dear to my heart. First of all, his vision, his passion, his enthusiasm, his commitment is just, it's contagious. It's absolutely contagious. You be around him, and those of you who have some time, stay off the church. He's going to be on the fellowship hall, talking with you, sharing more about the ministry. And this is the way he is every day with the people in Africa, with the people he's ministering to. And it's just contagious, and he's really worthy of our support. Secondly, I believe that the model he's developed is consistent with the New Testament in terms of what missions are supposed to be. New Testament missions is not people going and staying and saying, we know more than y'all, and if y'all become like us, then y'all can be very good and y'all can go to heaven. No, in the New Testament, Paul went to a city, he raised up some people, he turned it over to them. He said, now I'm going to commend y'all to God. Y'all know the word of the Lord. Y'all smart, y'all intelligent, y'all gifted. Y'all take this and run with it. The best thing that we can do is to give resources to organizations like Possibilities Africa. They know the people, they know the culture, they know the land, they know how to make things work and not trying to impose our Western views of what Christianity should look like upon them because it won't work there. A third reason that I'm just really attracted to the ministry of Possibilities Africa and Martin Simiu is because Martin is ranking right up there. Now, y'all know for me personally that Ben Tolliver is the greatest person I've ever personally known, that I personally knew, to watch their commitment to the Lord, watch their devotion to Christ, and their service to Christ. Ben Tolliver is the number one. Tom Tolliver is number two. As much as I kid with Tom, there's no one that I respect on this earth more than I respect him because his commitment to Christ and Mother Tolliver's commitment to Christ, y'all don't know the half of what they do every day for the least, the last, the lost, the left out, and the left behind. Their lives basically are a demonstration of what Christianity is supposed to be, of sharing whatever they have, food out of the cabinet. Tom giving these guys on the street money with these people, just like Ben used to be. We were always afraid that someone's going to take advantage of Ben, that someone would accost him because he was always so open to the people that were the most vulnerable. And Tom has picked that mantle up. And that's the mantle that Martin has, his commitment to the people that he knows the best, that he loved the most, and the place that he knows the best, and the land that he loves the most. Now, fourth reason I'm committed to supporting Martin's ministry is because He looks almost exactly like my chief nemesis when I was in college playing basketball, who I love to this day, Archie Talley. If y'all don't know, look at him, it's not a young Archie Talley, right? He looks so much like Archie Talley. Physically, his emotions, enthusiasm. Talley's for basketball, Martin's for the ministry of the Lord and the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I just think this such a very worthwhile ministry. I want to anchor thoughts for about 7 minutes in the passage that Martin made reference to and just kind of underscore some of the things he said, and we'll give the benediction ahead to the fellowship hall. And I'll just read from Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 17 through 20. Then I said to them, you see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste and its gates are burned with fire. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem that we may no longer be a reproach. And I told them of the hand of my God, which had been good upon me, and also of the king's words that he had spoken to me. So they said, let us rise up and build. Then they set their hands to do this good work. So the Bible says, he said, so they said, let us rise up and build. And that's what Martin is trying to inspire the people in his villages all throughout Africa, where they can see the distress. They see it for themselves. They see the economic distress that exists in a place like Kenya in those small villages. They can see the economic exploitation that's happened over the years, sometimes well-intended. People often tell the Bible that the missionaries went to Africa, they had the Bibles, and the Africans had the gold and the diamonds and all the precious stones. And once the transaction happened, the Africans had the Bibles, and the missionaries had the gold and the diamonds, all the precious stones. And they ended up colonizing almost the entire continent and exploited it for years through the colonization or occupation of the European countries and the African continents, basically taking the resources to benefit Europe at the expense of Africa. And it was all done legal and all done in the auspices of Christianity. And so now we've got to right all of that past wrong because the people over the years have been economically exploited and to a certain degree socially retarded, because the way you control people is by keeping them from developing incentive and motivation, and you give them trinkets and you give them a little crumbs on the table to keep them from being creative themselves and looking around and saying, here's what we have, here are the resources we have, and allowing their creativity to explode to figure out how do we make this work for ourselves. That is the Christian way. God has placed enough resources on the earth and in the earth to meet the needs of all the people that exist on the planet. There's no shortage of anything on the earth to satisfy the needs of the people. What we don't have is a distribution system. And the economic injustice, the economic exploitation, the control of resources, hoards the resources in certain places over and above the needs of people that exist in other places. So the church has to be that spiritual light pointing the direction, and it has to be able to educate people about all of human life, not just knowing the Bible. You can know the Bible and starve to death, right? If all you're sitting around and read the Bible, you're going to starve to death. Suffer from malnutrition, you're going to die. You got to turn that spiritual knowledge in terms of how do I manage the environment around me, and how do I take the skills and knowledge that I know and apply them in such a way to where I can carve out of the earth a living for myself and for my family. That was easy to do in this country when we're in an agrarian society where the majority of people live in rural places and work farms and so forth. Now it's a much more difficult and complicated here. It's difficult and complicated around the world. So what Martin is doing in Kenya and African countries is what I've tried to do here for the last 30 years, to get people to realize that the answer to every problem is inside the problem itself. So the answer to solve the problem of the west side of Charleston, it resides inside the community, inside the people that live there, that know the problems they're living with, and being able to try to motivate them and to challenge them to recognize they got to be committed to their own development. Superman is not coming. The Lone Ranger and Tonto are not coming. Batman and Robin is not coming. Nobody is coming to save you. That you must develop yourself. You must figure out how to make things work on your own and have less and less dependency upon other people. It's a hard message in our culture because in Africa, they know nobody's coming because there's no Department of Health and Human Resources, there's no Obamacare, and there's no Social Security, and all of this social service network that we have created, basically, that is needed to help some people, but it also retards people and leads them to believe that someone else is always going to take care of you. And so then people fail to realize that I must develop myself, and my best insurance is my own skills, abilities, talent, and hard work. And so I hope my young people here will hear this message from Martin, a young man who grew up in deprivation beyond your ability to imagine. Anyone living in subsidized housing on the west side of Charleston, in Section 8 housing, in public housing, they live in a plush palace compared to what the majority of the people in the African villages live in. You got probably 2/3 of the world, 2/3 of Africa that still doesn't have clean water. And that's a daily task just to find clean, potable water, drinking water. It's a whole different set of circumstances that they're living with. And you know why? They have heard enough about America. They still believe that it is the promised land. And so they come to America and they see it totally differently than what our children see it and our young people see it. They come to America, you mean to tell me you can go to school for free? You mean to tell me you can go to school, they'll give you the books, they'll provide you a building to go to school in, it's air conditioned in the winter, that's air conditioned in the summer, heated in the winter. There's a cafeteria there, and you get to eat twice for free, and you don't pay for none of that? And you mean to tell me that if you're kind of poor, then your family can get subsidized housing where you live in apartments that are brand new on the west side of Charleston, running water, air conditioning, all the amenities, and it costs you a fraction of what it would cost, and you can live like that? You can live closer to walk to the school, and for the most part, it's all free. And you mean to tell me that if you're poor enough, you can get a voucher from the government to buy clothes so you can go to school wearing decent clothes, and it's all free? And you mean to tell me they will give you a medical card that is better than Aetna and all those insurance companies? It's just like the American Express Diners card. You go to the hospital, they got to take it, and you mean to tell me it's for free? And all I got to do is get up every morning and get my raggedy self together and go to the school, and there are people that's paid to come there and to teach me, and they got to be there to teach me, and it's all for free? And all I got to do is put forth the time and put forth the effort and listen and behave and show respect and be committed to learning, and I can maturate all the way through elementary, junior high, college, and it won't cost me a dime. That's the promised land. And that's why people are breaking their neck to get here. And that's why they're on rickety boats coming out of Cuba and the Caribbeans. The good president can build a wall as high as he wants to build it. They will figure out how to penetrate that wall. Because this is the promised land. And they just want to get here for the opportunity to do something that for many of our young people has become a four-letter word, because it is a four-letter word or five-letter word, W-O-R-K. That's 4 letters, isn't it? That's all they want to come here and do. All they want to do is to come here and have an opportunity to work. And these people talking about putting people out, well, we can put them all out. We're not going to have no green beans, no cabbage, no fruits, no vegetables, because almost all that stuff is picked by the hands of the immigrant workers. Alabama passed that crazy law. We're going to get rid of all of what they call them illegals. They put them all out of Alabama, and the watermelons and all the fruit was rotten in the fields. Why? Because the poor white people and the poor black people, they think they're above that type of work. It was in the newspaper. Y'all should have read it. People showing up to mass, they were coming at work maybe through lunch. We ain't see them after lunch. Normally they quit at the break. The sun in Alabama is hot. We don't see no hot here. Tell the Brother Berger, you ain't seen no hot. You get down in the Alabama and the Mississippi desert. I'm trying to tell you, Mississippi Delta. Ain't no trees to cover you. You can't hide from that sun down there. And then people wouldn't do the work. So we should be motivated and excited by the work of Possibilities Africa, led by Brother Martin Simiu, and also motivate us as a church to recognize that discipleship is more than just teaching people the Bible. Jesus says, teach them to observe everything that I've taught you. Discipleship is teaching people how to live a life that is honoring to God, how to live a life that reflects that the blessing of God is upon your life, how to live a life that demonstrates you can take the intelligence and the physical skills that God has given to you and figure out how to carve out a living out of God's creation so that you can then bow your head before the dinner table and bless God because you're blessing him for the strength that he gave you to be able to do work, to buy food, and have a stove to cook it on and pots to put it in. And you're acknowledging that the good hand of God is the reason you have what you have. That's what discipleship is. So the church has an obligation to teach people how to live, to teach kids how to get into the school system and take advantage of those opportunities, to teach people how to do economic development, to create jobs in their own neighborhood so they can put people to work. Because the best welfare program is a work program. The best substance abuse program is put people to work. Y'all don't know about this. I grew up in the southern West Virginia coal field. And you know what? We didn't have too bad of a problem. Men would get drunk, but they got to get out of the house on Monday morning, and they got to get in that truck, and they got to get that coal mine, and they sober themselves up drinking coffee all night long if necessary. Because they knew that somebody was expecting them on that job, and they had to get to that job to provide for their families. Martin told the same story I could tell about my mama. My mama said, boy, you're going to school. She said, you're going to school, and if you don't excel, you're in trouble because you can't come home, and you better not stay away. So you're going to be in no man's land. You got to go to school. You got to go to school. You got to go to school. My mother always made sure I had a decent pair of shoes, a decent pair of pants, a decent shirt, and a decent sports coat, and a hat, because she felt that a well-dressed man had to have a hat. That's why I wear hats to this day. So I had a decent pair of shoes, a decent pair of pants, a decent shirt, and a sports coat. Get your raggedy self up and go on down into the Sunday school. They might learn you something. You go to church, you go to church school, you go to Sunday school, and you got to work. You got to work. I ain't never been afraid of nobody's work. I done had my name on a checking account since I was 7 years old at the Bank of Mount Hope, carrying newspapers at 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning, all the way through high school, working on the roads, painting posts, pulling up stuff out those dirty creeks down in Southern Fayette County. Always had a job, picking berries, picking apples, walking through the neighborhood, looking pitiful, knocking on doors. Don't y'all want to buy these berries? I'm just a poor black boy from up in McDonald Hill. It looks so sad. They would buy, here, boy, take it. Take your bucket too, right? Take the bucket back. Sometimes they'd buy it and say, just keep the berries, right? Walking through the neighborhood selling grit newspapers for 15 cents. Keep a nickel and send a man a dime. Selling cards, Christmas cards, selling flower seeds and different type of seed, because I got to have my own money and my own bank account with my own name on it, because my mama and grandmama said that if you're going to work, you ought to have some money. And as I close with this, my mama and my grandma used to say that every man ought to have at least $1 in his pocket to keep the hanks off of him. I never knew what the hanks were. But they made it sound so bad, I didn't want them on me. Whoever the hanks were, I didn't want them on me. You need at least $1 in your pocket to keep the hanks off of you. At least $1 in your pocket so you can give somebody else a quarter that really deserves it and needs it. So we're grateful to Brother Martin, Simiu, Brother Merrill Michael, and Impossibilities Africa for the inspiration they've given to me personally and to this church that we've tried to convey when we talk about Martin's work and what he's trying to do. And I show friends who know me well that know a fellow by the name of John Perkins, who has maybe third or fourth, fifth grade formal education, but the clearest thinker I've ever been around. And a lot that I've learned about community development, I've learned from John Perkins, first reading his books and then trying to sit at his knee whenever I could get to the Mississippi Delta to spend time with him. And like Dr. Perkins, Martin's a lot like Dr. Perkins. And I call Martin, the John Perkins of Kenya. Perkins comes up in Mississippi, just treated horribly. His brother gets killed. He leaves Mississippi, says, I will never go back. Them racist Ku Klux Klanners down there. Goes out into California, doing extremely well after getting out of the military, comes to faith in Jesus Christ, and guess where God sent him? Back to the Mississippi Delta. And you read his book, recognized as one of the 20 best Christian books of the 20th century. And he writes, he tells the story about a quiet revolution. He goes back to Mississippi, gets involved in community organizing, community development, trying to mobilize the people, and he gets arrested and beaten near death's doorstep for trying to register people to vote. And there in that Brandon County jail, he prayed and cried out to the Lord, if you let me live, I want to preach a gospel that is more powerful than the racism in the Mississippi Delta. I want to preach a gospel that can reconcile people across this great racial divide that exists. And God did let him live. And he preached that gospel. He created the 3 R's of Christian community development: reconciliation, relocation. At the heart of the gospel, God himself in the person of Christ relocated to the earth, right? Pitched a tent and tabernacle among us. And then he talks about reconciliation, that the primary intent of the gospel is to reconcile men back to God. God didn't do anything. We've broken the relationship. We've breached the relationship. But God takes the initiative in the person of Christ to give us a bridge that we can be reconciled back to God. So Perkins says that the heart of the gospel is to reconcile people back to God. And when people see the magnanimous grace of God and the forgiveness of God upon their raggedy lives, then it gives them the power and the ability to recognize it's possible to be reconciled people across racial lines. Even with 400 years of oppression and slavery, it's still possible with the power of the gospel. And that's what Perkins has given his life teaching. Relocation, reconciliation, and the third R that Perkins used is that of redistribution. And he always says that scares conservative people to death, because they think you're talking about taking all the money from the rich and giving it to the poor. And Perkins said that would be too simplistic. Robin Hood economics wouldn't work, because back in his day when he developed this concept, Perkins said if you take the money from the rich and give it to the poor, then the rich will have it back tomorrow, because the poor will go out and buy used Cadillacs, suede shoes, leather jackets, television sets. They won't produce nothing. They won't build an infrastructure to produce things. But when Perkins talks about relocation and reconciliation and redistribution is saying, okay, what made you successful? And what you're trying to do is to redistribute motivation, knowledge, education, incentive, insight, wisdom, the things that people need to know how to do to develop. And to do that, you got to be close to the people. You got to be close to the people if you're going to impact them in that way. So Brother Martin in Possibilities Africa is a powerful model that we hope that God will lift up for the whole world to see, that when the church takes its place at affirming the dignity of people and recognize that God is no respecter of persons, and God would not put them people on the African continent and not give them the wisdom and the knowledge and the ability to learn and the resources they needed to develop. Now, it might take some work, it might take some effort, but it can be done when people are motivated by the gospel of Jesus Christ. The same the case here. God has not abandoned the west side of Charleston. It doesn't have to be this way. This is a social construct. This has been constructed socially and politically the way it is, but it doesn't have to be that way. Applying the truth of the gospel and appropriate public policy, things can change. And things can change here, and things can change in Kenya. But the big change that needs to occur is in the hearts of people. It's in the hearts of people. That's where the change must start, in the hearts of individuals. We need to stay true to preaching the gospel. The people need to be saved. People need to come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, regardless of their social, economic position on the social hierarchy. Up and out, down and out, in the middle and out. They need to be saved. And the only way that can happen is through faith in Jesus Christ. He died on that old rugged cross of Calvary. His blood was shed as the payment for the remission and the forgiveness of sin. And it's still, whosoever will, let him come and let her come. And as Martin pointed out in his marvelous testimony, some people still believe today, just go and get baptized and shake the preacher's hand. Over there you get your name changed. You shake the preacher's hand in America. No, it is a conscious decision to say, I'm lost. I'm on my way to hell. I'm in trouble. And my only hope is to turn to God and recognize that he's made a way for me to be forgiven, and that's through Jesus Christ. And so I'm going to abandon everything I was thinking about and say, Lord, here I am. Have mercy on me. Save me. That's what salvation is. And then say, Lord, now help me to be the person you intended for me to be. Amen? Amen. Let's bow together, shall we? Father, we're so grateful.